I want to bring you now CNN senior political analyst, Mr. Ron Brownstein, and political commentator Scott Jennings. And in this corner, I'm kidding, it's not going to be any of that. Good to see both of you. Ron, I'm going to start with you. We're less than an hour away from Election Day, and all eyes are on Virginia. I spoke to Larry Sabato earlier. He thinks this race is leaning towards Glenn Youngkin. How worried are Democrats tonight?
They're worried. Look, I mean, in every election since 1977, except for one in 2013, the Virginia governor's race has gone the opposite of the way the presidential race went.
Okay, Ron. So with that said, then why all the hyperventilating and people getting the vapors about, oh my gosh, Terry McAuliffe could lose? I mean, that's what history has showed, right?
Well, right. Well, the main reason, Don, is that the state has become more democratic, over the last decade than it was through all of that history when it was a purple state or even Republican leaning in the 1990s. Look, I don't think Terry McAuliffe losing guarantees that Democrats have a bad election in 2022. But what it does tell them is that if the political environment stays the same, whether he wins by a point or loses by a point, it is going to be a tough environment for them to run in if Joe Biden is still at 42, 43% nationally. I mean, basically, what this tells Democrats either way is that job one has to be rebuilding Biden's popularity between now and next November through any means they can, because that is the biggest undertow that McAuliffe is facing.
Why are you shaking your head there, Scott?
I agree with a lot of what Ron was saying there. I think, first of all, the point you made about Virginia becoming a blue state, it's absolutely true. I mean, Joe Biden won this state by 10 points. I think for Republicans to be within spitting distance of this thing is miraculous in some ways when you look at the trend of Virginia. I know what the history is, but this thing's gotten very Democratic over the years. And what Republicans are looking for here, whether Youngkin wins or loses, I think he's a slight favorite. I agree with Larry Sabato. What they're looking for here is, does this party have a path back electorally in the suburbs? And what we've seen out of the Youngkin campaign is a heavy focus on schools, a heavy focus on crime, and a heavy focus on, kitchen table economic issues to see if they can move those suburban voters, say in Northern Virginia, back. They went against the Republicans in 18 and 20. Can they move them back towards the GOP? And it looks to me like that's where the party's blueprint is for some of these races in the midterm if Youngkin has the success that we think he's going to have.
Okay, well, having said that, Scott, let me ask you then, because basically what Youngkin is saying, this is my analysis, is saying, listen, hey, we want you Trump voters, but we don't necessarily want Trump in this race. So he's trying to keep him at arm's length. So what does that say about, whether Trump should be part of this or not? What's your analysis on that?
Well, I think he's responding to the empirical information we have from the last election in which Trump did not win the election. He lost by several million votes. But everywhere else down the ticket, House races, Senate races, governor's races, state legislatures, Republicans actually did quite well. And so there are a whole bunch of people out there, and Youngkin knows this, who actually want to vote for, run-of-the-mill, standard issue, conservative Republicans, but just didn't care to vote for Trump. He knows this.
That's my question.
So he's run the kind of campaign to try to attract both.
That's the gist of my question. Hold on, Ron, because I find this very fascinating. That's the gist of my question. So where does this, Scott, put Donald Trump in all this? Should the party be looking beyond him? Or do you understand what I'm saying? I'm getting at?
Yeah, well, look, it's a great question because Youngkin has run, I think, a really smart campaign designed to try to run a coalition effort inside the Republican Party, bringing together all the coalitions you mentioned. This is the prototype for the future where you actually have more cohesion than you had, when Trump was at the top of the ticket. Also, look, he's his own man. He's got his own ideas. He's running his own race, and he's telling the people of Virginia, I don't need to be a clone of somebody else. I just need to be who I am.
Okay.
And it's also a rejection of what McAuliffe has done. McAuliffe has tried to make this thing all about Trump, and Youngkin's tried to make it all about Virginia issues, and we're going to see which one works.
Ron, same question.
Yeah. Well, look, I turn it around and look at it from the demand side, I guess. There's no question Donald Trump is the dominant figure in the Republican Party. The Trump faction is the largest faction in the Republican Party. About 3/4 or 4/5 of the party is in line with what he is doing. But there is about 1/4 of Republican voters, maybe 1/5, depending on the poll, who are uneasy with everything Donald Trump has done, particularly since the election, and who view many of his actions as a threat to American democracy. If Trumpism is going to be curbed in the Republican Party, those voters have to exact a price on other Republican candidates. If, in fact, to use Scott's phrase, if they kind of revert back to voting for a run-of-the-mill conservative Republican who nonetheless is winking at Trump's claims of fraud and signaling that they will enable rather than confront Trump, there's simply going to be no incentive for the party to try to move away from Trump. If they feel they can get the best of both worlds, if they can get that Trump turnout, the turnout among the Trump base, and also hold and even win back suburbanites who aren't easy about Trump, any effort to stop Trump in the party is going to be very, very difficult. So in some ways, this comes back to those Republican voters who are uneasy with Trump. If they continue to drift back toward candidates like Youngkin, they are more likely, I think, to get Trump as their nominee in 2024.
Okay, so Scott, having said all of this, Trump is in the race. He's not really in the race. He's kind of in the race. He hasn't been there, but he's doing these tele-rallies. I mean, he also released a statement today full of lies, falsely questioning the integrity of Virginia's elections, but also telling his base to flood the system and get out and vote. I mean, for months, he has been saying, don't trust the elections, don't trust the system, and now he wants people to go vote. You can't have it both ways, or I don't know, maybe you can.
Well, he certainly told the people of Georgia back in January that their votes wouldn't count, and some were listening. And he has been on this message. It strikes me that someone's gotten to him, because now he's put out a couple of statements saying, well, I didn't mean people shouldn't vote. And so it may be that finally people that he listens to, whoever that is, have said, hey, you can't tell people not to vote, because if the Republicans win the midterms and next year, I mean, you're not going to be able to claim any credit for it. And so I also think what's happening is there's a sense that Youngkin has momentum, and you're seeing these statements coming out from him because he wants some of the credit here for this. Yeah. But I think Youngkin did the right thing, and he ran his own race. He didn't feel like he had to lean on Trump for anything. And unlike McAuliffe, who feels like he has to lean on Biden, Obama, and every other Democratic luminary, Youngkin was his own man here, and I give him credit for staying the course on that and not giving in to the idea that you got to bring in Trump or anyone else, frankly.
Hey, Ron, I have to go. If you can just give me 10 seconds, seriously, to respond, because I know you want to respond.
Yeah, look, I think the biggest question for Democrats is going to be, do they see the signs of the usual problem in midterm, which is that their base is depressed, less eager to vote than the other side, and also how big a drag is Joe Biden, whether McAuliffe wins by a point or loses by a point. I think the clearest message for Democrats is that they have a shared interest, a kind of survival interest in rallying around the Biden presidency and trying to rebuild his approval rating, because if it is at this level in a year, it is almost certainly going to be a very tough night.
All right. Thank you both. I appreciate it.